Welcome to the Biz Bash podcast, where we make biz strategy a piece of cake. I'm Elisabeth.
And I'm Cami, but you might know us better as Eliza and Calligraphy and Cami Monet. We want to help you, our fellow stationers, artists, and calligraphers, confidently build a profitable and personality-driven creative biz.
We're here to share our honest-to-goodness advice and actionable strategies for ambitious artists.
So put on your party hat, quit being a procrastinator gator, and let's get this party started. Oh man, you guys, welcome to episode number 3 of the Biz Bash podcast. This story that Elisabeth is about to tell you guys is going to be hilarious. And I can't wait for you to hear it. It is awesome.
Oh, okay. Man. It's still just like one of those. It's a great icebreaker, to be honest. Like whenever I meet like a new like creative or calligrapher and I talk about the story, I mean, everybody knows who Laura Hooper is if you're in this industry.
Yeah.
Is this so makes for
your fun fact? And people are like, oh, now we're going to go around the room and share a fun fact about you.
Oh my gosh. I don't think I've actually used it for like one of those ever before. But I mean, it's embarrassing also on so many different levels. I still think I'm blocked by her, to be honest. I haven't checked in a very, very long time. But the funny thing is that, like, even though she did block my Eliza and Calligraphy account, I still have like access to it from my personal account. So I could check it if I wanted to. I don't even follow her from my personal account. Once you get blocked by somebody, you're kind of like, oh, okay, this is mortifying.
Yeah.
But now it's just like funny to me. And now I am like publicly sharing the story for the first time because I've shared it with people like one-on-one before in small groups.
I feel like everyone's going to think you did something really bad listening to this, and it's really not that big of a deal.
No, guys, it's not that big of a deal. It's like the name of the episode is totally going to make you guys think that something terrible happened. But no, I'll start off by like telling you guys the story.
Story time, yes.
Story time. I got Instagram in the fall of 2015 for my business. So I started it basically like a year before I went full time was when I started my Instagram account. And so I was trying to post like every time, every single day, because the algorithm at that point hadn't like screwed everybody over yet. So you could grow your following like decently, you know, quickly, if you were being active on the platform. So I was following like a lot of other big name calligraphers because that's what you do when you first start an account for your art is you follow the other like huge names in the industry. So I think like Laura Hooper was obviously one, Angelique Inc., Written Word Calligraphy, a lot of these names that are like very recognizable. Valerie McKeitron, how do you say her name? Cami. Lillian Val.
Oh, Valerie McKean.
Thank you. Yes. Like
I love her.
All like very, very big names that I was following. And Laura Hooper was one of them. And Laura Hooper has been doing like calligraphy workshops and calligraphy stuff for a long time, like longer than everybody else. And so she's kind of like been like the spearhead of like the calligraphy industry.
The OG of calligraphy, basically. That is her.
Yeah, she really is. And in terms, like, she wasn't the first to do calligraphy, but she was like the first to like really make like a business like based around calligraphy. Right. And so obviously it was like really easy for me to like be intimidated at that like point of time by like, oh my God, like look at her website, all the different styles she has. How did she do this? Like all the feelings of like insecurity that you have no matter what. Well, at this time, I was just like I said, like sharing every single day, finally starting to find like my niche in the creative community. I probably had like 400 followers. Like my account was still small, but I was like still being very active and engaging with people. And that's like what matters. And I was trying to share information with other artists because I had a really hard time at the beginning finding out, like, especially as a left-handed calligrapher, like what nibs could I use? Like what would work for me? And so, yes, I was asking like other creatives questions on Instagram, which is something we're going to be talking about later. But I remember like, it wasn't like even through a DM. Gosh, I don't even know.
I don't think DMs existed then, did they?
They maybe were like brand new because there's a DM in the story. So that's how I know that. But like when I first started using Instagram, gosh, whatever like year that was, the DM feature was not available at first, I don't think. So you would just like comment on someone's photo, right? And ask like, what nib are you using? Or like, what paper is this? You know, and everyone's like asking these questions and like, people wouldn't really share, which now I understand as a small business owner, like why? Because you can't take the time to answer everyone's questions. And because I just like hadn't really figured out how to like Google everything yet. But I also was just like mad because I didn't get like why was a nib so sacred, right? Why was it like just like even the material like so sacred to a business? So here's where the story really starts, because if you guys listened to the first episode of the show, you know that I hated my full-time job before I was working for myself. So I came home. It was, I'm pretty sure, a Friday night. And so I was having wine. I was just trying to like unwind and relax. I had probably had like a glass of red wine. I was sitting in my bed. I can remember this all so well.
This is a very clear picture.
Yes. And I was scrolling through Instagram and somehow ended up on Laura Hooper's page. And I was like looking through a bunch of her posts, and there were all of these questions that people had asked, and none of them were being answered, which like, okay, none of them were being answered. But for me at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, that's like so rude. She hasn't answered any of them. Or I don't even think that I thought it was rude. I was just like, these poor people are like asking questions and they're not getting an answer.
Well, you do have a savior complex. You love to come in and help people a lot.
Oh my gosh, I totally have a savior complex. It's a real problem. I have to keep my mouth shut like a lot when I think someone's doing something wrong. So I like swoop in, right? Because I was like, I'll help out a couple of these people. Like, I know what nib Laura's using in this video, right? Most of the time it's like a Zebra G or a Nico G, or like a nib that like a lot of calligraphers are familiar with if you've been doing calligraphy for a while. So I replied to a couple of them and I was like, hey, I'm pretty sure, like, I don't think I made like absolute statements, but I was like, I'm pretty sure like Laura's using like the such and such nib in this video. You can like search for it online. I think I said something along those lines. And I think I did this. I think I replied to about like 5 people.
Oh my gosh. I thought you just replied to one. I didn't realize it was 5.
No, it was definitely like more than just one person. But within minutes, I had been blocked by her account. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, what just happened? Because one of the ways that I like knew that I was blocked is I actually got a message like from her page. So whoever was like managing her page sent me this like very official message, which I like no longer have a copy of anymore. I don't remember it super well, but basically like the premise of it was like, we can't have people sharing information on our page that like might not be correct because of our business image or like what we have to maintain. It wasn't even image. I'm like butchering this, but they had like this whole paragraph like explanation about like why I had been blocked. And I was mortified. And also you have to remember I'd had a glass of wine. So I like really wasn't trying to harm anybody or like be mean or be like passive aggressive or snarky. I was just trying to help these people. Hindsight's 2020. I can understand why she blocked me because it's conflict of interest for her, because I think they sold materials like in their own online shop, right? So they blocked me. And the funny thing is I've never been unblocked. I even messaged them back. The thing I think I was like most upset about at the time was like I hadn't received some sort of warning. I guess I had assumed that they would have reached out to be like, hey, could you not do this anymore? Like, we would like, prefer to, direct people to like our shop with, to purchase like the materials that they need. I just like straight up got blocked. At least they told me why, I guess. But anyhow, that's how that story ends. Like I said, I've never been unblocked.
Elisabeth is blocked from Laura Hooper's page, which is so funny. I mean, at that time, you just really don't understand the value of like protecting your information, and like that there are some things that you obviously want to share as much as possible and help people. But like, how would you have reacted if someone had, a nib is like pretty basic, but if someone had commented on one of your photos and was like, oh, this is where she gets this printed, blah, 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 or whatever, to people who are asking.
Yeah, hindsight's 2020. Yeah, I don't think I would have blocked someone. If anything, I just would have deleted the comment, because you can do that. Yeah. Or maybe have messaged the person, because I like having a conversation with someone. If I feel like my toes are being stepped on, I don't think the best way to handle it is to block somebody.
I know for a fact you would have definitely messaged them and been like, hey, I just want to let you know like why this is this. And I would have just deleted it and not said anything.
Right. And But you're right. Like, I probably would feel like my toes were being stepped on if someone did that on my page. But there have been instances like with wood signs where people do share information with each other. And honestly, I don't care, because sometimes I get tired of answering those questions anyways. And a lot of that stuff I'm like open with. So it depends on like the situation and what it is. But if I had like proprietary information to me, because it's different for everybody, but proprietary information to me that was being shared, yes, I would find that like annoying and frustrating. Like, I feel like she was justified, or whoever it was that blocked me, because I don't think it was necessarily Laura. It's like whoever's like managing the account for her.
I know. It's probably her sister. Doesn't her sister do a lot of stuff?
Yes, it probably was her sister.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'll ever be unblocked, guys. Maybe this episode will get me unblocked. I'm just kidding.
I know. Maybe she's going to double block you, and she's going to block your personal page too after listening to this.
Hey, you know what? In a way, I feel like it did me a bunch of good, because then I stopped looking at another creative and like freaking out, like, how did they do this? How will I ever get there? All these like insecurities and doubts. So maybe in the long run, it like did me a bit of good that I like couldn't really look at that stuff anymore.
Yeah, honestly, it probably did. You put your blinders on and just focus on yourself, and you learned a little lesson about, not everything needs to be public. But I don't know. It's so weird. I get questions all the time in DMs being like, what printer do you use? Who's your print company for foil? What kind of paper is this? And some stuff, like, I am totally fine with sharing. Other stuff, I'm just like, this is something I worked really hard to discover for myself. And I went through a lot of tests, and I'm just not ready to share it right now, because it really is like proprietary. And, I think sometimes people just need to respect that. And it's not like out of being mean or trying to be, I don't know, like hoarding all the information to myself. But like there's some things that like set you apart that you don't necessarily have to share. But oh my gosh, do you remember that Instagram, like, I don't want to say fight, Instagram drama that happened on your page when someone got mad at you for not sharing where you got your wood from, or like the type of wood you used or something, because you have it in your course. You sell it in your course. So you mentioned like, it's not really fair for me to tell you this right off the bat, because I actually have a course, and if you're interested, like, go ahead and purchase this or whatever.
Yes.
And then she got really mad about like community over competition and what does that mean. But honestly, it was really interesting how many other creatives came to your defense, being like, hey, we don't have to share everything with each other, and that's totally cool. Like, we're all different.
Oh, I totally tagged some people too, because I felt like I like needed help. Like, I know that I like tagged you and Nicolette and probably Lainey and like a couple other people that like we're all friends with, to be like, guys, like, someone like back me up here. Like, I was getting like ripped a new one by this person who felt like I was not justified in like keeping some information to myself. And honestly, guys, like, wood signs, just get them from like your local like home supply store, literally any local home supply store. That's why that question just drives me nuts.
I know. And I think you said that, and she was like, but what specific type? And you're like, well, just go look and see what you like. Like,
yeah, that's how I did it. I went and like walked around and like picked out something that I like thought would work and experimented with it. And all of this goes to say that there are like certain Instagram guidelines and certain etiquette to be used on Instagram, especially when interacting with people and asking for help and asking questions. So we're kind of going to go through some of those because I feel like they're unspoken rules. The
unspoken rules. Yes, totally. And like disclaimer, I'm afraid we're going to sound mean in this episode. I'm like, now I'm scared, but we don't mean to sound mean. We're just really trying to be honest with you guys. And be as real as possible like we do. So here we go.
Yeah. I don't think we'll sound mean. I think we'll just sound real. Like this is just us being honest.
I think a lot of people are actually get annoyed when people are asking just like point blank, like, how do I do this or whatever? Yes. So, yeah.
Because normally you can Google it or there's a YouTube video for it, or like there's no point to ask somebody like how to make a clipping mask in Photoshop via Instagram DM when there are hundreds of videos on YouTube for that. So
yeah,
I haven't gotten that question specifically. That's just an example of like something someone would ask that I feel like.
Oh, I get questions like that. Like, how do you do this thing in Photoshop? And I'm like, honestly, like sometimes that's why I'll just do a story, like showing something because it's just easier.
Yeah.
And I'm in the mood to answer a question. And other times I'm just like, you should Google it. So
lots of great resources out there.
Yeah, so let's just talk, since we're already kind of talking on this one of the general guidelines is pretty much asking questions. You really need to be appropriate in the questions that you ask and like really think before you ask someone a question. I mean, this is not saying we're like turning away you asking for help, and like we obviously have a platform for that. We want you to ask questions at Q and Cake, so bizbirthdaybash.com/Q and Cake. But sometimes just like a direct DM can feel so, I don't know, like intrusive to someone.
It can, especially if you don't have a previous relationship or like no thread of conversation with that person prior.
Yeah, like I'll just get someone who just follows me. Like I see that they just followed me and then they message me and they're like, where do I get blue envelopes? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, why are you here? Go Google it.
You?
I don't know. Like it's just weird. I don't know who you are. Like, I don't know. I've never talked to you. You've never liked one of my posts. I've never followed you. Yeah. Like, you want to have a relationship with that person first. Like that will honestly go a long way if you really are like, if you really do admire someone. Like there are other artists and calligraphers I admire and I follow them. I keep up with what they're doing. I'm interested in them. I'm interested in their process. And I might be like, hey, I mean, I don't think I've ever really messaged anyone, but I would feel more comfortable reaching out to them if I had created some sort of like social friendship with them first.
Right. I mean, you know me. I still get awkward asking you questions. I'll be like, hey, Cammie.
I know.
Like, I know that there was this one thing. You're like, why are you being so weird? Like, we have a relationship. Like...
we have a business together. Like we kind of have to ask each other questions.
But that's because it's like so easy, or like more like asking you like sources for something, right? Like if I were to be like, hey, I noticed you did this like really cool thing. Would you mind sharing with me like where you got that from? Like I still feel awkward asking you questions like that.
I know, it's so weird. And guys, I do not feel like your candle loses light by lighting another candle or whatever. Like I really think it's okay if you tell people things, but like honestly, so much of it is like the way you ask it and how you're coming in. Like your approach is so important, but honestly, most of the things you can just Google. So I would say, can I Google this before asking a question?
Right. You need to always ask yourself that question. I think people just forget that on Instagram, it's a human behind the Instagram page that's answering everything and commenting back. And it's not an AI like Google that's like automatically doing it for you. Like it may work like Google if we spit out the answer that you want, but it's like, we have to spend that time and that effort. And this goes for like anybody who's receiving questions, like any creative in the industry receiving questions. Like you deserve to have your time and your space respected. And you don't have to share everything.
No, you totally don't. You can just ignore the question if you want. So, I mean, but yeah, and if you are the one asking the question, like, I think you have to be prepared that you might not get your question answered at all. And it doesn't mean they're a bad person or that they don't care. It's just, they honestly probably have no idea how to like say something without hurting your feelings or making it weird. So they just don't say anything.
Right.
Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I would say that is true. And it's so much of it depends on like the mood you're in too. Because like if it's been like a long work day and I get on Instagram and I have like a DM waiting for me with like a question that I'm like, this is something that could be Googled, like I'm a lot less likely
blue envelopes.
Right. Like I'm a lot less likely to like handle that with grace. Or maybe I type it up and it looks like I'm handling it with grace. And in my mind, I'm like like fuming, right?
So annoyed. I know, guys. I know. I sound so mean. Sometimes I just get so annoyed by the questions. But honestly, that is another reason why we created Biz Birthday Bash, is we really wanted a place to like direct questions and like be a space where we are inviting those questions in. So they're not just like you're inviting someone to your house, or they're not just showing up and knocking on it being like, hey, look at this or whatever.
Right.
Like we are inviting you into this. So it feels like a better place for it. So yeah, like knowing the right time, the right place, like whether it's appropriate or not is huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's so on so many different levels. And man, I was going to add something onto that, but I feel like I had like a total like brain fart.
Oh, I bet I know what you're going to say. Like you have a resource page where you direct people to.
Oh my gosh.
You know?
We're like one brain.
I know. I knew you were going to say that. So like having... Go ahead.
Yeah, no, if you are someone who's getting questions a lot, the best thing you can do is create like your own little landing page or resource page that you can send people to. So that's been funny about doing that, because another thing that has happened is like someone will go to my resource page and they'll use Dubsado or QuickBooks Self-Employed or something else I've recommended. And then they'll come back to me and be like, I'm having a problem with Dubsado. How do I blah, blah, blah. And that's when I'm like, hey, you know what? They actually have a great customer service team. Like you should ask them.
Yeah, that is true. So yeah, but if you're the person getting the questions, you should create a resource page to direct people to, which will save you tons of time. And if you are the person asking the questions, you should go see if they have a resource page before you ask the question. Like be proactive, you guys. Like mine's listed right on my website. I also have like different story highlights of tips of like Photoshop stuff and printing envelopes. Like there's a lot of stuff already there, like for you to just go, use. And you just kind of have to find it yourself. So there's so many times I'm like, yeah, like people are like, where do you get this? And I'm like, here's my supply page. Here's my supply page. I literally have it as a like shortcut on my phone where I can just like copy and paste it. So, or just directing people to the tips, highlights on my stories.
Yes, that's very smart. I mean, it's like when you think about people asking questions, we as creatives have taken time to put together resources and landing pages and blogs and YouTube posts. And now we're doing a podcast, right? And so it's like, just respect us a bit and do a little bit of the legwork to try to find what we've already put out there. Because most of the times it's already out there.
Yeah, that is true. Like, I already did a blog on this. If you would just go look at it.
Or like about going full time. Like we did an episode about that, but I actually have a blog post about it because I get asked about it so much. That I'm always like, here's what I wrote about it. And then everyone's always like really thankful that they have a place to go. But I think the most frustrating thing is knowing deep down, like when you do get asked that question, that there was no work done whatsoever to look first. Because if they had looked first, they most likely like would have found it and wouldn't have needed to like ask.
I know. Sometimes this is going to sound so mean, but when I get questions, I'm like, oh Lord, you're not going to make it. You're just not going to make it. I'm so sorry. Because it's like such like a huge question, like how do I do everything in business? And I'm like, oh Lord, have mercy. I'm like, you should
like in terms of
start on Google.
Oh, I'm sorry, I lost you there for a second.
Oh, I just said you should start on Google. But that's like, oh man, like there really is so many awesome resources and courses and classes and other podcasts to listen to. Like there's just so many things that you can learn like for yourself without sliding into someone's DMs.
Right.
But anyway, what are some other like general guidelines that you would recommend for etiquette? Let's
for
see.
Instagram. Well, I had another one in the tip of my tongue again, but it also totally went out the other side of my brain. So
see, we need lunch.
But I know I'm like looking at our like list of notes of things to talk about. It definitely had something to do with asking questions, but maybe it'll come back to me.
Yeah, we can come back to that. So, but yeah, so like one of the other things is in terms of guidelines, like how personal do you really want to get on Instagram? Like, I think some people can get a little too personal and it can be a little bit of a turnoff. So like knowing what to share in your business and what to not share, there is definitely a line there, but I think that line's farther away than you think, if that makes sense. Like, I think people can be really weird about sharing their faces or like parts of their actual life in their business. And I think that is awesome. I think you should totally share more of that. People want to see your story, know who you are, but like maybe don't share, a picture of your dog every single day on your feed or whatever, even though I'm sure he's really cute. Like, definitely keep that kind of stuff more in stories. What do you think about being too personal on Instagram?
Yeah, there are actually luckily very few instances I think where I can think of somebody getting too personal.
Kind of have that.
But for the ones that I can think of, I can think of them. Like I remember very clearly certain things where I'm like, I don't want to know that, or like here's like a really funny random story. Is I actually remember a creative that I was following shared. This is so funny. It was just one of the like Friday introductions, like 5 weird things about me. And one of them was that this person didn't like cilantro. So at restaurants, they would tell the waiter they were allergic so that it wouldn't get put on their food. And I got so mad I unfollowed him.
What the heck? Why do you get so mad at the most random stuff?
Because I felt like, I was like, that for me crossed a line because why would you, because there are people out there, here's where this goes back to, like I have friends with kids with like deathly allergies. So to like use that as leverage to get something you wanted, that came across to me as like, oh man, that like hit me wrong. But that's so funny because for other people, they probably like would have laughed and thought it was great. But for me, that crossed a line. I'm just laughing. For me, that crossed a line and I was like, unfollow. Like I cannot follow you anymore.
You're like, forget this. I am just not even
so
gonna
funny.
Deal with this
and
today.
she's very successful. Her like aesthetic is beautiful. She did nothing to me at all, but that was something that she shared that she personally decided to share that was like a huge turnoff to me. And so that's just the thing you have to remember is like you don't know like what you're putting out there that might like really like weird someone else out. Or
guys, if you don't like cilantro, don't tell us.
No, Tammy.
I'm just kidding. I know why you unfollowed her, because not because of the cilantro, but because of the lies. Don't lie about cilantro. How dare you? Oh my gosh. But yeah. Oh, and like getting personal. I think like being ranty, like when you call people out on your stories or like, just calling someone out really is like a little bit too personal.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a no-no for me. Like I understand when people get frustrated when people copy or steal work, but I'm also not a huge fan of publicly ostracizing anybody. I've personally messaged people before to make them aware that their work has been copied, their work has been ripped off, and how they handle that is like up to them. But that's not something that I would have like posted on Instagram stories to be like, this account is doing like XYZ, like I don't know. I just like, I have a different feeling about that. I'd rather like personally handle it in the dark.
Go to the root directly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go to the root directly.
I mean, because that can, just affect the way your business is viewed. Like I sometimes get really frustrated with customers or clients, but I would never, be like, this person, I would never share those kinds of things on Instagram. Like, just things where I'm like annoyed or frustrated with the way a customer is emailing me all the time about.
Thank you. That's a great example.
Order, and like complaining about that. It's just not a good look. And, even though we all have those frustrations as a business owner, and I think it's good to be open about your frustrations and the struggles we have, but maybe not get like super specific with who it is and exactly what happened. Like there's a time and place to talk about those things, and publicly is probably not the best way to do it.
Definitely not the best way to do it. Yeah, I heard from a friend that she had followed somebody who would like get on stories and he would complain about like clients and projects on his Instagram stories. And she was like, this is too much for me. Like, I can't do this. Like, I think she either muted the stories
like, the client could see that. I mean, that's just you gotta
be like really careful because everyone is watching. Like, even going back to what you had talked about, Cammie, with like the girl who was mad that I like wouldn't share where I got my wood for wood signs, you know, and we had that whole strand of conversation on Instagram, which I thought like I tried to stay like very like respectful and like kind, but tone can't.
Yeah, I mean, it was not a fight. It was definitely being like trying to explain like why as creatives we do hold on to some things and why we like support each other. It was because we're all very
much a discussion, but I also understand like you can't read tone. Like you don't know what someone's tone is when you read a comment. Because I actually had a girl who DM'd me to tell me like, hey, I don't think the way you handled that was great. Like, I think it, like, she basically kind of insinuated that she thought it made me look bad, and that it was like a turn off, and that she didn't, you know, it would like make her less likely to like buy something from me. Like, she was very honest about it, and I appreciated it.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's just the way some people might have perceived that, you know, because you can't read tone in those messages. So if you like came in there with a different perspective, you're like, oh, she is mad right now. Like, then
very aware then too of like, okay, everyone is watching. Like, especially when something like that is happening, like people really are watching. And then I had like a good conversation with her too via like DM to be like, I think every artist should be able to like keep certain secrets and be able to like stand up for themselves and not be bullied. It was just the whole situation was like weird and terrible. And frankly, I felt terrible like the rest of the day. Like
it really got like blown out of proportion.
It was like, but I did not block that person. I didn't delete the comments. I like left everything there. But that actually was like part of really when I was like starting to phase out wood signs too, because I feel like there was so much burnout for me of like not only creating the wood signs themselves, but like everyone else like wanted to know how I was doing it. And I like couldn't handle it. Like I made like a course and everything. And I made a course at the beginning of my business when I had no idea what I was doing and no idea how to market it. But it still like lives on my website. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, like you built this resource and you're just, it's frustrating. People are like, you're like made something for them to better their business. And you're like, well, I have this. They're like, no, I just want you to tell me. Like, it's crazy.
Exactly.
But, yeah.
Oh, let's talk about the like infamous, like asking me to repost work or give a shout out. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think all the etiquette really falls into the DMs right now. But yeah, like, getting DMs of people being like, hey, will you give me a shout out and repost my work? And I'm just like, what? I have never given anyone a shout out or reposted anyone else's work. So why would you think that this is okay to message me this? It's just so bizarre and it makes zero sense. And I have no idea what kind of mindset you're in to message someone that is just so
weird. I have a policy for that now. When people ask me that, I give them a warning, and I wow, this also makes me sound really mean, but I kindly say to them, like, I don't do that, please don't ask again, or I will probably block your account. Like, I'm very straight up about it. I'm like very honest, like, that's not something I do, that's not something I've ever done, like, please don't ask again. Like, you know.
Yeah, I would respond like, sorry, I don't do shout outs, and have like 14 smiley faces. So that's why we're different. But I wish I was direct and awesome like you, but I have like, I would send like bunny emojis and all this stuff.
Yeah, I'll like fluff it all up. Like,
yeah, everything's fine. But yeah, just, oh gosh, you guys, there's so many other ways to get your work seen. And asking for a shout out, unless you're like, I'm looking for people for a gift guide or whatever, then obviously, you know, those two things are very different.
And you have to remember there's like a lot of these things that if you're trying to make a business connection, like DM's not the right way to do it. Like you normally just send them an email that kind of outlines, like, especially if you're wanting to collaborate, like don't do that over DM. Like send an email to somebody and like formally introduce yourself and take the extra step to go above and beyond. Like people are treating DMs like email, and that's like not how it's supposed to work, I don't think.
Oh my gosh, I can't even stress that enough. Like email is so much better than a DM. Honestly, DMs get lost. I don't see them for a few days. Email, if you wanted to collaborate or you're looking to get invitations done, or you are another creative like who wants to collaborate, email is so much better. I mean, so much more professional. I instantly am going to treat the conversation with more respect and, you know, think of it as like, oh, this is a good opportunity versus a DM. I'm like, okay, whatever. This could be, you know, it's taken so much different, so much lighter on DMs. So there's just no weight behind it.
Absolutely. I feel like DMs are supposed to be like a fun way to like connect with someone, to like reply to an Instagram story, or
there's just like fun little chats, not really like serious business talk in a DM.
Absolutely.
But, I mean,
and the other thing, I think I remembered what I was going to say before, is I've had this happen quite a few times where I post like Instagram stories about something and someone replies asking a question completely unrelated to anything I've been sharing about in the story. And it honestly really confuses me. Like, I don't really understand. Like, are they hoping that they have a better chance of getting an answer because they replied to a story? Those ones, like, I'll be quite honest. Like, guys, if I'm doing Instagram stories about, like, let's say I'm, like, talking about, like, white ink calligraphy on an envelope, and you reply back to me and ask, like, where I get my wax seals, I won't even answer. I just won't. Like, I have like my tolerance for that, like when it's so out of context and so random, is like 0. Like I would much rather prefer
that
like
is so true.
that you just like DM me, like no strings attached, like asking, and I'll still maybe not like handle it like the best, but I'd probably be nicer than if you like replied to a story that has nothing to do with that in the first place. And please, like when you do ask questions, like use punctuation, capitalize things correctly. Like there's nothing worse than getting a question like, where do you get your wax seals, all lowercase, no question mark, like
you don't know who they are. Yeah, I mean, God, we sound so picky. I bet we get no DMs ever after this.
Gonna stop DMing
Everyone's like, unfollow. They are the worst.
I have done the worst. Like disclaimers like this on my Instagram stories before, like being honest with people and explaining like my point of view. But then I always disclose at the end, like if we have a prior relationship or, you know, we have talked before, like, of course you can like reach out and ask me something. This isn't me sitting here saying like, no one ask any questions ever. Like, don't ever talk to me.
Don't talk to me. Yeah, basically what we're trying to say is we want you guys to be resourceful, to like look for things on your own. Don't just, you know, think you're going to always get easy questions asked or answered for you all the time. Like just Google it, find out for yourself, look for the resources that we've already put out for you. And of course, you can always ask us questions on Q and Cake.
Cammie, why don't you talk about Q and Cake? Because I feel like we're kind of close to wrapping up at this point.
Now this is going to make us look not like jerks. So yeah, we do want your questions on Q and Cake. So that is bizbirthdaybash.com/Q and Cake. So the letter Q, the word and Q and Cake. So this is going to be our FAQ episodes where we pick a few questions that you guys have asked us and answer them on little mini episodes of the podcast. So we are welcoming your questions on there. And this is a great avenue for it. It's appropriate. You can ask whatever you want. And you're going to get much better answers for us so we can actually talk about it instead of trying to type it all out with our little thumbs on a DM.
Totally.
So yeah. Definitely head there with your questions, and we welcome them with open arms.
Oh my gosh, this is so funny because this is the end, and now I'm remembering the thought that totally left me before. I'll drop it in here real quick while we're wrapping up. Is when asking questions that are constructive, like have like a to the point question, like reaching out and asking for tips and advice is like super vague. And it makes it really hard to formulate a good answer. So that being said, if you guys do go to Q and Cake, like message us questions or ask questions like somewhere direct, I guess, that you like need help with. Because it's hard for us to be like tips and advice. Keep doing it.
Tips and advice on starting a business. I get that a lot. Tips and advice for starting a business. And I'm like, oh, I have so much to say. So now I just push them to Biz Birthday Bash. And
yes, I push all this people to Biz Birthday Bash too, because I love the Biz Birthday Bash community, guys. And y'all all are awesome.
Yes, we're sorry if we sounded so mean, but we know, like we said, we're going to be honest. So here you go.
We're going to be surprised because I think there's other people out there that feel similarly to us.
I think this is a very taboo conversation that people don't want to say that they're annoyed by DMs, but they.
I mean, some people even put in their Instagram profile like no DMs. So you know what?
Yeah, I'm not doing that though. I do actually. I love getting DMs from people who are actually like having a conversation and talking to me, and
absolutely, and being encouraging. That's another great way to like become friends with somebody, is to like say you love something that they did.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's how you start a relationship with someone. That's how you make friends, and then you can ask them questions.
Absolutely. The one other thing too is that if you guys have been loving what we've been talking about, make sure to leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe.
Yep, do it, and we will talk to you guys later.
Bye.